I know you've said in the past that infidelity can be an inherited behavior. What did you mean by that specifically?
Okay, so this is the idea of the cheating gene. And that's a
Yeah,
nickname, the cheating gene. There is no gene. There's no
right.
physical gene. All right. The cheating gene is borrowing from the physical idea, right?
Hmm.
Oh, you got the cheating gene. Well, what is that? Oh, well, that's actually energy. And why is it energy? Because when your father cheats on your mother, if that
Hmm.
happens, when he does that, he creates a field in the mind. And the field in the mind is a field of disconnection. And when he creates that disconnection, the child feels it. Now, it doesn't know, you don't even have to know your father had an affair. You don't have to know that, right?
Yeah.
But if the father did have the cheating gene, if they had that disconnection, as a child in your adult life, you're going to feel it. Why? Because it's in the subconscious mind.
Welcome to Natalie Saves the World, one podcast at a time. A space for honest conversations about mental health, self-love, relationships, living more consciously, finding clarity, and spreading light through all of life's challenges. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Natalie Saves the World, one podcast at a time. My guest today is Larry Bilotta. He is a marriage counselor, author, and founder of You Can Save This Marriage. Today's conversation is for anyone who has ever wondered why relationships can feel so confusing, even when you're self-aware, reflective, or genuinely trying to do things differently. I personally come from divorced parents, and it's something that has definitely shaped how both my sister and I think about love, commitment, and marriage. After spending 27 years in a deeply unhappy marriage, Larry experienced a personal breakthrough that transformed not only his own relationship, but eventually the lives of tens of thousands of people seeking clarity, healing, and agency in their relationships. Larry is especially known for challenging conventional relationship advice and introducing concepts like the chaos kid phenomenon and the invisible lifestyle, frameworks that expose and explore how our subconscious programming shapes love, loyalty, and self-sabotage. Larry believes something both radical and hopeful. It only takes one person to heal a marriage. So Larry, welcome to the show. Really excited to have you here. Could you share just a little bit about your background and story and how you came to be where you are today?
So, when I hear that question, I think, well, is this the long form or the short form? And then
Either one.
when people hear the question like, how'd you get here? So I condense it this way. In 1974, I married Marcia. Now,
Okay.
when I married her, I didn't decide to marry her. I just like thought, okay, let's do that. So the way we were doing it is we were dating for a little while, and she said, "Well, what are you going to do?" I said, "About what?" And she said, "Well, are we getting married or what?" And I said, "Oh yeah, okay,
I guess so.
I guess so." And so she said, "When?" I said, "Oh, how about Tuesday?" And that's literally the way we
Wow.
started. That's the way we
Really
started. It was not a romantic relationship. And the reason it was not a
interesting.
romantic relationship is because we were two people who were programmed by our parents
Yeah.
with a core message. The core message is stay married and stay miserable. And each of them did that. And so because we had that, that's in our subconscious minds, we had that and we believed it. And even when everything got really, really hard, there was no leaving. There was no quitting.
Mm,
There was no running away for both of us. Like, so
right.
it literally held us there for all those years. So I'm talking about 27 years. I'm talking about when they impeached Richard Nixon. That's the
Wow.
start of it. And they elected the second Bush. That was the end of it. And so
Wow.
that was the period of time. So I put that in the context of the world. But that was a long, long time. And it was
Right.
very messy and very sloppy. And so what I had to learn is I cannot compete with this woman who was raised in meanness. She was literally
Mm,
raised by some pretty angry people with tempers. And so when she had problem, she went right to that. And
right.
so that's what we all do. We all do what we were literally born and instructed to do. Because if we think about it, our subconscious mind is a big vat, and the big vat is loaded with urges and needs and longings. And we don't have any words. There's no words in that vat. But above
Right.
the vat is the conscious mind. And that little jar is where we have all our personality and thoughts and everything we think we can express. So what happens is that vat will release things into the conscious mind and literally start to influence us in a way that we're not really sure how it's happening. But what I had is I had that being released into me, and so my subconscious is delivering to my conscious, and so
Right.
literally was living in a very painful situation. So what I decided to do is I'm going to become the learner, and that's what I call it, the learner. And so she was not the learner. I was the
Mm,
learner, right? What she was is she was the teacher and I was the learner. And so that's what it was. And so her style was meanness and temper and anger. And so because that was her style, I had to find a way to live with that. And so when you live in a very, very hard situation that you don't like and is really miserable and you want to run away, but the reason that's happening is because you were thrown together in the big picture. You were thrown together for a purpose, for a
hmm.
cause, for a reason. And so what it is that in that throes of that difficulty and that hardship, you're going to learn something. And you're not going to learn something if you're all happy in Disneyland. You're not going to learn anything. But if
Right.
you are suffering, if you're hurting, you are going to think deeply, you're going to analyze, you're going to compare, you're going to start to really look in hard places that you would never look if you
Yeah.
were not in pain. And so being in pain is a great thing. It's a fabulous thing because without pain, even though it's messy and sloppy and hard, it
Yeah.
just makes you learn something. And so what I ended up doing is I ended up teaching myself all the elements of how I was going to love myself. So I had to become a person who loved myself. Well, when I came out of my parents' home, they were very calm people and they were very burying. They buried their feelings. And so they didn't talk about things. So it was a non-conflict home. Marcia's home was a conflict home. My
Yeah.
home was a not conflict home. I just want to make this little side note. When we decided to get married, we didn't tell anybody. We
Oh,
just went and
wow.
got married, right? And then we came home to her mother's house and we felt we're married. And she was so happy because she really didn't want her daughter living with her. This is her youngest daughter. So she was really happy, right? But her parents and my parents never had one single interest in meeting each other, not one time,
Wow.
right? Now,
Interesting.
now, why is that? Because
Yeah.
their value systems, otherwise than stay married and miserable, other than that, they were really separate, and they had nothing
Mm,
in common at all, right? So,
yeah.
so now that I didn't think about that till years later. So this is the story of getting in a ignorant start where I had no awareness, I had no knowledge, no insights, no realization at all, and
Wow.
because what happened is Marcia turned on the heat and she turned on the heat and she turned it on really early. And so we started fighting. Now, why were we fighting? Well, you know how you have this little voice inside your head that makes you pretty crazy. And so it made me pretty crazy. Right? It made her crazy, made me crazy.
Mhm.
And so I was doing things to ignite her and upset her, right? And so I was doing all these terrible, embarrassing things. And so that mess that we began in went for 27 years. Now
Wow.
that's 27 years of me learning. That's like, you can't imagine that messiness and that sloppiness, right? There's nothing neat or a straight line about any of it, right? So I'm giving you this this very big condensation of what made me actually. I had developed a course to save myself. That's what I did.
Wow.
I developed a course to save myself. And so, because I was teaching myself the whole time, I eventually started to realize, maybe somebody else ought to do this too. Maybe somebody else might think this is important too. And so that led to a whole series of things that's caused me to teach a men's group and a women's group today,
Wow.
right? So I keep the men and the women separate. They don't connect. They don't talk to each other, right? Because we don't want that, right? So the women learn from each other and the men learn from each other. And so I
Interesting.
teach a course called the Environment Changer. And the reason I call it the Environment Changer, which is a terrible name, right? Because nobody knows how to repeat it. Environment, what? So
True.
the environment changer is called that because you're changing the environment of your mind. That's what this
Mm,
is. It's a mind course. It's not a body course. It's not a
mhm.
behavior course. It's not what you say and what you do, what you don't say, don't do. It's none of that. It's what you do in your mind. And so what do you do in your mind? You think a thought, you imagine a picture, and you believe a belief. When you're thinking about the thoughts, the imagination, and the belief, you're actually in the center of energy, and you're starting to change what's happening to you as an energetic person. So that's my little condensing. How'd you start?
Wow. No, that's a lot to unpack. Super interesting. I mean, I can share a little bit about my story. So I personally grew up with divorced parents, and it's definitely had a real impact on how I think about love and commitment. Both, I would say both my sister and myself, we actually kind of did the opposite of you, like because of our divorced parent.
Okay.
So my sister, I think, was dating her now husband for, I want to say 10 or 11 years before they got married. And I was dating my ex for 7. or six before we got engaged. We actually broke up. It's a long story. We can talk about it. But we kind of took our time in getting married because of our fears about divorce. Kind of the opposite, where you're like, let's just get married. We were like, let's really think this through and let's really make sure without a doubt that this is the right person for us to marry. So just interesting how that can impact us. Is there any sort of like correlation between growing up with divorced parents or parents who maybe stayed unhappily married and struggling later with relationships or marriage?
So let's simplify this. Okay. The subconscious mind, that big vat I'm talking about,
Hmm.
that subconscious place collects every instruction that you have in your first 10 years. And in that
Mm,
first 10 years, what's happening in emotional intelligence, the book tells us that your synaptic connections are building and they are in the billions. And so those synaptic connections build and build and build. And that's what the 10 years is about. Well, what's
mm,
happening there is your subconscious mind is forming in those synaptic connections. And so
right.
as it forms, what's happening? Well, everything happened on a Tuesday on the 33rd of this year, of that particular year, or that the mood your mother was in, the
Hmm.
mood your father was in. Well, all those things are here. They're in that place called the subconscious, and because they're there forever. And because they're there
Mm,
forever, now the question is the past the past? No, the past is not the past. The past is today. It's right
right.
here, right now. And what past are we talking about? We're talking about the first 10 years. And so I talk to people I've been talking for interviewing people. I've got like over 2,000 interviews. When I write these interviews down, what I'm doing is I'm asking people about their childhoods,
Yeah.
his childhood and her childhood, his childhood. And I ask about them over and over again. And when I ask over and over again, what I'm learning is they don't like to talk about the childhood. They like to
Mm,
talk about what's happening today.
same.
So
Yeah.
tell me about your first 10 years with your dad. And like, then my dad died, but we're a lot better friends today, right? And they'll say all these today stuff, all
Yep.
these today stories. I think I don't want to know about today. Today doesn't matter. What matters is then.
Yeah.
Then is what matters because then is going to come up and tell you what to do. So that's the reason I deal with subconscious mind so much.
So the first 10 years are especially formative. I know there's a lot now of talk about attachment styles and that early
Yes.
attachment. Is that also like, would you say that those first 10 years really impact our attachment style as well?
So there's people who build their whole careers on attachment styles.
Yeah, it's huge. I read
Right?
the book Attached. Like it's a
Yes.
huge thing now. It's
But
very
but
trendy.
the reason they're using that now, first of all, because it's a new. But the other thing is that what is an attachment style? Well, I talk about the invisible lifestyle,
Hmm.
right? The invisible lifestyle. What is the invisible lifestyle? It's invisible. You can't see it, but it's a way of life or a style of living that reflects the values of a person or a group. So well, that's what a lifestyle is. Well,
Hmm.
we should talk about attachment styles. Attachment styles are ways of living out of your subconscious and conscious minds, right? So you have the urges, needs, and the lungs of your subconscious mind. Well, if something's happening to you in the current moment, like you're 30 years old or 33 years old, and at that moment in life, in that moment in time, you see life this way, right? You see a life, let's say you see it as rigid.
Hmm.
Why do you see it as rigid? Because in your subconscious mind, there's rigidness there. There's a person
Mm,
there that was very absolute, very severe, right? Well, that's what you are now. You're very absolute. You're very severe, right? And so, talk about attachment style. What kind of attachment style is that severe person? Well, they got names for it, right?
yeah.
And they got a lot of names, right? And so the
Anxious,
names are a
avoidant.
shorthand for us to hold on to the idea as a thing called attachment. But when you have an attachment style, it's almost like, okay, I know about the 12 attachment styles, but now what do I do? Right?
Yeah.
And so that the idea that we can label something doesn't necessarily really help us. That's good for the psychologists and the professionals. They love labels,
Yeah.
but it doesn't help us because what we do is we take their labels and we throw them at each other. That's what
Hmm.
we do. Oh, you are an avoidant. Yeah, right.
Yep. Oh
But it
yeah.
doesn't help you to know that, right? That doesn't help you.
I think it
So
helps a little bit. Like, I wish I would have known more about attachment styles. Like, so for example, I know I'm an anxiously attached. For those that don't know, the listeners who don't know, there are kind of the three main categories of attachment style, right? There's secure, which is ideal, which is like you feel fully comfortable attaching to a partner. There's anxious, which is kind of that's what I am, by the way, which is You are always worried about the other person leaving you. You're always wanting to be around them. You're kind of like a puppy, like always wanting attention, always wanting someone around. And avoidant, which is they kind of go into their hole. They want to distance themselves. They're afraid of someone getting too close, etc. And it tends to be, from what I've observed, that the anxious and the avoidance really attract each other, or they somehow always end up together, which is also interesting. Would you tend to agree with
So
that?
you, but so Natalie, you can learn something from
Yeah.
that, right? You have all this awareness of the attachment styles, but as you start to think about the attachment styles, which kind of calms you, like, okay, I kind of know
Well,
what this
that's
is.
why this is happening because I'm anxious and they're
Yeah.
avoidant. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It just gives some context, I
Right.
guess.
But so when you go into the question of like, why am I so anxious? Why
Yeah.
am I so frantic?
Yeah.
Because in your childhood, what's happening, you're not analyzing anything as a child. You're just
Right.
letting everything in. And since it all
What
comes
are the
in,
instructions?
instructions, well, you think about the way your father was, and then think
Mm-hmm.
about the way your mother was. And then ask the question, who do I take after most? Now, what do you think you did? You take
My
after your
dad.
father, you take after your
Yeah.
dad.
He's,
Okay.
I would say, anxious as well. Attachment
Okay.
style.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So you take after your father, and now when I say take after, I'm talking about the big broad taking after. Like generally you take after in a lot of ways.
Oh, I think both. Yeah, depends on what. I thought
Okay.
just with attachment style because he's more anxiously attached.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say I'm a blend. Definitely a
Okay.
bit of both.
Okay. So now the question is, can I choose what I use? Can I choose what I use? And so this just sounds like in the moment, if you have this much awareness, in the
Mm-hmm.
moment, like how would mom deal with this?
Mm,
How would dad deal with this? And so
right.
I'll give you an example. So my father was a social guy, very, very social. My mother was very
Mm-hmm.
social as well. But my
Mine too.
father, who I take after my father, when he got into a group of people, he became so social. His family didn't exist. The people he was supposed to care for, be responsible for, they didn't exist. Okay, got
Oh,
the
wow.
idea?
Mm-hmm.
So so I'll give you the example. I have three visits to three couples,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm married now a second time. And so I have my wife, and she's staying in the room, and I go down to visit with these people. Three houses, three couples. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I go visit each couple, and as I go to visit each other, I become my father. Now, do I know
Interesting.
I'm becoming my father? No, I don't know it. I'm just so caught up in the entertainment of it all that I
Right.
can't even see what's happening, right? And so what happens each time, my wife got very upset at me.
Oh,
Why?
wow.
Because I abandoned her.
Mm,
Right? I
right.
walked away from her. I didn't know she existed. And she could feel the energy of me not knowing she existed. Right? Well, that
Yeah.
was the way my father did it. My
Yeah.
dad did, right? So the first time it happens with the first couple, and then she's upset, right? And I go, oh, no, 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 right, right. Then I forget. Then the next couple comes to the next visit, and then it happens again, same way.
Right.
Then the third couple, it happens again, right? Like, oh, gee, right? So,
Subconscious.
right. So, so now after the third time, I go, oh, gee, I got to do something about this, right? And so what do I do? I call it digging a foxhole. When you dig a foxhole, you're literally aware of the enemy is coming for you, right? So you dig a foxhole, you dig a trench, right? So you can be safe down there and you can
Mm-hmm.
watch for the enemy, right? So that's called digging a foxhole. And so I thought of that term, dig a foxhole, because we were going to go see another couple, a
Oh,
fourth
wow.
couple, right? And
Had to
so what
prepare.
I know Dad's coming with me. Dad's coming with me. And what's he going to do? He's going to do what he always does, right? And where's my dad? My dad is in my mind. That's where my
Mm-hmm.
dad is. My dad is fully existing in my mind. And so when my father takes me over, I'm going to become what he became, a guy who's not aware. And so
Interesting.
when I dig a foxhole, I start to realize, I got to watch for this. I got to be aware. I got to think about this. And so that awareness of the foxhole started to actually cause me to go to that family, go
Mm-hmm.
to those people. I'm really excited to see them, everything. But because of the foxhole, I remember, wait, something's not right here. I think we're talking too long. I
Interesting.
started to do something new. I started to do
Yeah.
something new.
To
And so
break that subconscious
so I
pattern.
was I was starting to change the pattern because I had a little gadget. The gadget was the idea of the foxhole, right? Being alert and being aware, and the foxhole kept me aware. So
Interesting.
I gave that as an example because if you want to choose, if you're aware, you choose to become like your mom or you
Mm-hmm.
choose to become like your dad. And now you're
Interesting.
making choices like I want to see, like, give me a short explanation of the best qualities of your mother.
Both of my parents can be very magnetic. Like my mom is she's magnetic, she's ambitious, she's creative, she's an artist. She's very warm, I would say. I think, yeah, she has high ambition, she's intelligent, very caring. Both my parents are very charismatic. They're likable. Actually, my mom was on my podcast. You can watch the episode. I had her on and we talked about like creativity and reinvention and artists.
So
Why?
what I'm talking about the choice. When you are feeling in a like a little dark moment,
Hmm.
when you choose the best qualities of your mother, and if you could sum up like charismatic, let's pick
Hmm.
one word. Charisma is a really kind of a magical thing. You have that charisma, for instance,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Everybody
yeah.
can see that as they watch this, right? You
Both
have
my
that
parents
charisma,
have charisma. So I
right?
definitely, yeah.
Okay, so you've got it from both sides.
Yeah.
So when you become charismatic, you become a very magnetic person who relates to people, right? And
Yeah.
you have a flow that happens
Hmm.
with people, right? That's what I was telling you at the beginning of the podcast, that you had this ability to ask questions that were deeper than most people do on podcasts. And I
Yeah.
was thinking, wow, that's really unusual. Where'd you get that? And so uh,
True.
when you take anxious, you've got an undesirable thing because it's a quality in the subconscious that's dad-like. So
Mm,
you can switch to charisma, which is mom-like, let's say,
hmm.
and it's mom's style of charisma. You know what mom's
Interesting.
style of charisma feels like? You can almost kind of feel it, can't you?
Oh, you're saying my specific mom's style of charisma.
Your specific.
Yeah. Yeah. They're different types of charisma, my two
That's
parents.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when you single out one feature,
Hmm.
charisma, and you start to single in on your mother's version of it, it starts to make you feel a whole environment about you
Right.
that changes your whole orientation,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And so if you make that switch, your anxiousness is not going to survive. It's not going to
Oh,
stay. It can't
interesting.
stay. Why? Why? Because you're now zeroing in on a specific word. And what is a word? A word is an energy. That's
Right.
what a word is. A word is an energy. It's got a definition and it's got synonyms, right? And so the definition and the synonyms collectively are the energy of the word. And so
Interesting.
charisma has that. And so when you single out your mother's version of charisma, that can get so strong within you that you start to feel like, oh, I'm feeling not anxious anymore.
So
That's
interesting.
gone away. That's gone away from me, right?
Yeah.
So that's the idea of changing the environment of your mind. You start to
Wow.
change the environment of your mind. Now, how do you do it? With thoughts, and you use words because words mean things, and
Right.
words create an energy field within you, and you can create that anytime you want. But you've got
Wow.
to be a really aware person. But a person who's changing the world with a podcast is pretty aware.
That's the goal. Yeah, I think I'm pretty aware and deep. Yeah, and like you said, sometimes all of this comes from pain. Like I think if we don't experience pain, we have very little motivation to ever
That's
change our
right.
behaviors, change our environment, and become more conscious. Yeah, I talk about all these things on the podcast as well in other episodes. I wanted to dive deeper into something that we touched on earlier, which is our inherited traits from our parents, everything that we've been. I know you've said in the past that infidelity can be an inherited behavior. What did you mean by that specifically?
Okay, so this is the idea of the cheating gene. And that's a
Yeah.
nickname, the cheating gene. There is no gene. There's no
Right.
physical gene. All right. The cheating gene is borrowing from the physical idea, right?
Hmm.
Oh, you got the cheating gene. Well, what is that? Oh, well, that's actually energy. And why is it energy? Because when your father cheats on your mother, if that
Hmm.
happens, when he does that, he creates a field in the mind. And the field in the mind is a field of disconnection. And when he creates that disconnection, the child feels it. Now, it doesn't know, you don't even have to know your father had an affair. You don't have to know that, right?
Yeah.
But if the father did have the cheating gene, if they had that disconnection, as a child in your adult life, you're going to feel it. Why? Because it's in the subconscious mind. So it's in
Mm,
that big vat.
right.
Because it's in that big vat, what happens when the cheating gene turns on? Well, it turns on, and what happens? You become very attractive to the opposite sex.
Mm.
Very attractive. Weirdly attractive. Like, ooh, you don't even look that good. Why are you why are you attracting these women, right? Why are you attracting those men? Right? And so we like to make it physical. We might like to make it about the body. It's not about the body. It's
Hmm.
about the messages that you got in childhood. And if your father gave you the message that you should disconnect, you should be unfaithful, unfaithfulness is going to be the result. And now you're going to feel what he had. He has it, now
Interesting.
you have it. And so that's why the nickname, the cheating gene, right?
Hmm.
So what happens is you become very attracted to the opposite sex and you don't actually know why. You don't
Interesting.
know, well, what's creating this? Well, your dad created it. Your dad created the ability to attract the disloyal, to
Mm,
attract the troubled, to attract the attractive or the shallow or the whatever, right? And so as you start to look at how people are unfaithful, they literally have that need. And I'll give you an example. My
hmm.
father was a musician and he never really cheated on my mother. Why do I know that? Because I never had women attracting me ever. I
Interesting.
never had women attracting me. Like I wanted them to be attracted to me, but they were not. Right? Because
Interesting.
what
Hmm.
that says is my father was very loyal and he did not have the cheating gene, right? And that's how I know it. I know it because I couldn't do it. I couldn't
Interesting.
create that level of disloyalty, that level of attraction. But there's some
Right.
people who have the big cheating gene and they really have a problem because they just everywhere they go, people are attracted to them because
Interesting.
that magnetic energy is happening to them all the time. So that's around the idea of disloyalty. But everything is in the mind. Everything's there. And when you think in terms of conscious and subconscious, it's all in the subconscious. And I say the words urges, needs, and longings. Urges, needs, and longings. No words, no sentences, just urges, needs, and longings. Do we understand what those are? No, we don't. We don't understand what an urge is. We don't understand what a need is. We like it's almost like if we were to express it as an idea, we would almost have to not be able to use a word. We would say, uh, uh.
Mm,
What is that?
yeah.
That's an urge, right? Like,
Right.
oh, gee, right? Right? You'd
Yeah.
make sounds. You would like make sounds because an urge and need no longer has no words in it, so I can't talk about it. I can't explain it, right? But that's
Right.
what's driving us. What drives us into our, and by the way, when that subconscious enters our conscious mind, we have to turn it into words. We have to turn it into things like, why do we, so why did you do that? Well, I
Hmm.
did it because my subconscious mind told me to, but now I can't understand why I did it now. Right?
Yeah.
So we have these things that are so how do we say we don't know what a mind is. A mind is like vast. We can't even imagine it. But
Right.
the mind is beyond us. We can't picture it. We can't draw a picture of it. There's no way to talk about it. So what we'll do is we'll draw a brain to
Yeah.
illustrate a mind. And they can't do that because there is no way to see the mind.
Wow.
Since we can't see it, we have to use words, and that's why words contain energies. And energies matter because they change how you feel. And when they
Right.
change how you feel, you go where you feel. Where you follow your feelings. So I use that example of your mother as
Hmm.
charisma. And the more you dwell in your mother's charisma, more you imagine your mother's style of charisma, the less anxiousness troubles you. And you can
Interesting.
kind of, you're not doing the exercise right now, but you
Yeah.
can imagine like, oh, I got to try that,
Yeah. No, no, no. I think even just thinking about the word charisma kind of takes me away from my
Yes,
anxiousness. Like just, yeah.
yes,
Yeah. 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 Wow. So interesting. The mind is very
yes,
powerful. Powerful stuff.
yes.
Well, I know you talk a lot about the chaos kid phenomenon. Can you explain a little bit just like what it is and how it quietly shapes our adult relationships, even for
So,
people who are successful, self-aware, and doing the
so
work?
picture this. 15 years. I've been doing this for 15 years. What have I been doing for 15 years? Well, 15 years ago, I said, I'm talking to people, I'm interviewing them, and I'm trying to find out about their situation. What are they talking about? They're talking about the current day. They're
Hmm.
talking about their adult lives. They're
Right.
talking about conflicting opinions, conflicting attitudes, blah, blah, blah. And so they talk about this a lot,
Yeah.
right? But as I started to learn more about the subconscious mind, I started to realize they're living out of their subconscious minds. They're not living out of their conscious mind. They're
Right.
living out of their subconscious mind. Why am I even spending time talking about what's going on now? It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. I don't want to hear about your dad died or your mother was sick or your dog was right. None of that matters. What matters is what happened in the first 10. And so I started to
Mm,
do that. And as I started to do that, I developed a scale. The scale is 10 to 0. Now, why did I choose 10 to 0? Because it's a nice contained number. And then I defined what the scale is made of. So here's the picture of the scale.
mhm.
10, mom and dad love each other and they love you and they teach you and talk to you. That's a 10. right? When you have that, you have all kinds of wonderful things happen to you. You got commitment, you see loyalty, you see confidence, you see service, you see humility, you see all that because that's what they give you as a
Mm-hmm.
10. Let's go to the other side of the scale. And the other side of the scale, you see what selfishness looks like. You see what lying looks like. You see stealing. You see divisiveness. You see struggle. You see
Mm-hmm.
all that survival, and because you see that, that becomes what you live on. You live on the zero side of your life. So what happens? The people who are tens and nines will marry twos and ones and zeros. Oh,
Interesting.
well, that changes everything.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we can't have intimacy because why? Oh, because I'm a 10 married to a zero.
Right.
Oh, and I see that because I record these 10 to zeros and I start to realize I've got a pattern of 2,000 interviews of using this scale over and over and over again. What do I know? I know that I never have a 10 married to a 9. I never have a
Interesting.
10 married to a 9. I don't have that. Why? Because those are great parents. Great parents creates great kids. So
Yeah.
what happens when a 10 marries a 9? When they have some marriage trouble, you know what they do? They go to a little seminar or something. They get a little help of some kind and they snap out of it just like
Mm-hmm.
that. I've seen it happen.
Fix it.
I've seen it. I've seen these people
Wow.
like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, right? And
Yeah.
they admit they're wrong. They say they're sorry, right? They do
They
all that
move
stuff.
on.
Why? Because they're a 10 or a 9, right? So what happens when a 10 or a 9 marries a 2 or a 1 or a 0?
Chaos.
I'm sorry doesn't exist. There's no I'm sorry for a 0. There's no sorry. They didn't see sorry. They didn't see apologies. They didn't
Yeah.
see forgiveness. They didn't see any of that stuff. That stuff is like out of their world. They don't know anything
Mm-hmm.
about it. They might admire it from a 10 or a 0 or 2 or a 1, but they can't do it. They can't live that way. And
Interesting.
so who do I attract? I attract 10s married to 2s, to 1s, to 0s. And that's who I attract. And so what am I doing in my course? I'm getting people to start to learn about the care and feeding of a chaos kid. So if you were raised at a 10 or a 9,
I'm probably at two or two or
well,
one. I don't know.
so the guideline is what puts you at a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0?
Mm-hmm.
Abandonment, abuse, and neglect. Physical or emotional, abandonment, abuse, or neglect. So that's my guide. I always look at that for that in the story. Is there abandonment, abuse, and neglect, physical or emotional?
Mm-hmm.
And so if that's what I'm looking for, and when I find it, I locate them on this scale, like a
Mm-hmm.
2 or a 1 or 0. And before I do, if the story is really bad, I'll say, is there anybody who saved you? Anybody who lifted you up the scale, like grandma, a teacher, somebody like that. And
Okay.
so I ask that question all the time because I got to find out, did anybody make a difference here in that
Yeah.
childhood? And sometimes I will hear it. The story will go, well, I would always go to my grandma's. And my
Mm-hmm.
grandma was so kind and so loving, and she would teach me things that, right? Tell
Yeah.
a story like that. I said, you spent a lot of time with her? Oh, yeah, about 5 years of my life. And so what is that? I got to raise them up the scale now because
Right.
they're not the 0 I thought that they were because of grandma. So grandma puts them
Interesting.
at a 5 or puts them at a 4.
Yeah.
And so now they're adjusted by that grandma's presence, right? So that's the chaos kid. The chaos
Interesting.
kid is just using that scale to locate where people are raised. And where they're raised is how their marriage goes.
Well, you mentioned that a lot of the tens or nines end up marrying the zeros, ones, twos.
Yes.
Is that intentional? Is that subconscious? Are they like, why would a 10 be attracted to a zero?
Okay, I'll tell you why, right? Tens are good homes. Tens are great parents.
Mm-hmm.
And what do we learn about great parents? They take care of the less fortunate. That's what they all do.
Oh,
They
interesting.
give,
Yeah.
they give to causes, they give to schools, they give to less fortunate,
Right.
right? And so the child is raised by the idea, care about the less fortunate.
Take in the less fortunate.
That's
Okay.
right. Okay.
Mm.
So what the child does, then they make a decision. You know, if I should take care of the less fortunate, like mom and dad show me, I should probably marry the less fortunate. Now, that's not a
Ah,
conscious thing. It's a
yeah.
subconscious thing, right? But with that subconscious, they're drawn to the less fortunate.
Interesting.
And here they
Mm.
come,
Wow.
right? That's why I married Sheila, right?
Very interesting. I'm just thinking about
So the
like,
less fortunate,
yeah, sorry, go ahead. The less
the less
fortunate.
fortunate person is an instruction in the subconscious. And mom and
Mm.
dad showed how do I care for them, right? Now remember, they don't care for them emotionally. They care for them physically. They help them with money. They help them with food. They help them with clothing. That's what they saw. They saw
Wow.
them caring about their bodies.
Yeah.
But they didn't teach them about how you care for the chaos kid's mind ever. They
Right.
never showed that. So the child doesn't know anything about the mind.
Right.
And so now I'm going to marry a chaos kid, but I don't know how to care and feed the chaos kid.
So interesting.
There's a lot of do's and don'ts of a chaos kid. But one of the don'ts is do not ever, ever give a hint of criticism. Why? Because a chaos kid is so sensitive to criticism. Oh my God, are they sensitive to criticism? They can't roll with their punches. They can't do it. They're just very, very sensitive. Because they're so sensitive, a hint of a criticism, they'll pick up on it and attack you right away.
Yep. Yep.
And so that's an example of care and feeding of a chaos kid. There's like a lot of do's and a lot of don'ts. And so when you learn about the care and feeding of a chaos kid, you got your own things you're struggling with. Even if you're raised at a 10, you got your own little anxieties, little moments that your parents were not so good or right. You've got whatever little stuff you're struggling with, but you've got to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is you end up with mood swings. You know what a
Mm.
mood swing is, right?
Yeah.
And when you're not feeling so good and you're not feeling so happy, right? And you got a chaos kid,
Yeah.
well, how are you going to remember the care and feeding of a chaos kid when you don't care about the chaos kid, right?
Right.
And so you start to go, like, what about me? You
Yeah.
start to do all the things you struggle with, yeah.
Oh yeah.
And so that's why the work of the care and feeding of a chaos kid is not, you can't just learn it. You've got to really make it deep inside yourself. But that's because you are now realizing I'm a 10. I'm
Mm.
married a 1. I got to care about that. I will love this woman. And by the way, my men who marry their chaos kids, they love them. They really love them. And
Interesting.
and it's almost inspiring to see how much they love them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what the scale allowed me to do, to learn about.
Very interesting. Yeah, I'm just thinking I would maybe now everything that you said, maybe I'd be like a 5 or so. And then I'm thinking about my ex. His father passed away when he was 10. So
Okay.
maybe this also, I don't know if that like if a parent passing relates to
It
the
does. It does.
chaos. So I'm just thinking maybe we were both around a 4 or 5 and then obviously we weren't compatible, it didn't work out. But I think I don't know. Does that ever happen? Like, do two
So
fives ever attract each other?
I'll give you another guideline for the scale.
Yeah.
A 10, 9, 8 is purpose. And if you're a 10, that means they didn't fight. They loved each other. If you're a
Mm,
9, they had some fighting. If you're
okay.
an 8, they had a lot more fighting, right?
Interesting.
But you're still raised in a purpose home, even though
Okay.
they had fights, right? And maybe sometimes they drank too much and maybe sometimes they had fight for that reason, right? So
Hmm.
10, 9, and 8 is purpose. 765 is called the twilight zone. The twilight zone is where your parents don't really raise you. They don't really spend time with you.
Mm,
They don't really teach you. They don't really get you ready for life. They just don't. And the
interesting.
reason they don't really get you ready, that's by the way where I was raised. I was raised in the twilight zone because my parents were really caught up in their own lives. And
Yeah.
because they were caught up in their own lives, that who cares? So I'm the youngest
Fend
and
for
they really didn't
yourself.
really fuss over it, right? Yeah. So fend for yourself, teach yourself,
Hmm.
learn everything yourself. And so that's the twilight zone.
I
And
think
so
my ex
you
was that as well,
all right,
to some extent. Yeah.
so when you think about the Twilight Zone can move down on the scale
Mm,
to chaos and move up the scale to purpose.
interesting.
It's like a Twilight Zone kid has the ability to move up or down. And that's what I'm talking about when you pick charisma to undo anxiety, right?
Interesting.
That's a choice to move there in your mind. And
Yeah.
when you move there in your mind, your emotions are going to follow. And so that's really what the work is. The work is like, am I married to a middle of the road Twilight Zone person? Because if I am, they have a tendency to move up or down. If they're like
Oh.
really bad mood swings they
Hmm.
struggle with, they will move down the
Interesting.
scale and they will become deeper in chaos. If they have the free choice to move as a middle of the road person, they can go to the lofty stuff of love and kindness and sensitivity and caring and compassion. And so when they move up, they're like inspirational people. Like,
Mm,
wow. When they move down, oh my God, they're hell in their handbasket, right?
very interesting. And they can have different periods of their lives when they're moving up or moving down.
Because everything's controlled by mood and energy. And so
Interesting.
everything is like, what's making all this happen? But we don't know what's making it all happen. All we
Wow.
know is we have a subconscious mind and it carries things. And what it
Right.
carries, we have to pay attention to because that's the content of what's running my life. So psychologists say 90% of your life is lived from your subconscious mind. Now that's a scary
Wow.
thought. So we have a conscious mind that is not connected to the subconscious. It's a place of words. It's a place of thought. It's a place of conscious, stuff, right? The subconscious isn't like that. It's just loaded with these urges, needs, and longings that could get into the conscious mind and start to change what you're feeling at the time. And so lots
Wow.
of this is being influenced by your feeling. And so in my course, my environment changer course, I'm teaching how emotion affects everything. And so I teach a thing called the energy train. And the energy train is a kind of like a useful idea because what the energy train does is it literally goes out every minute. It's a train that is made of cars, 7 cars. And so the cars are called my mood, my attitude, my feelings. Those are the first 3 cars. Then the subconscious cars are my sensitivity, my energy, my frequencies, and my vibrations. So that's the 7 cars of the energy train. And if you picture, the cars go out every minute. Now you don't know it. It's not something that's physical. It goes out, but there's a vehicle that carries our emotion to the person we're closest to.
Mm,
Now we can
yeah.
think about that. Oh, so there is a vehicle that carries emotion. Oh, and it's going out every minute, you say? Oh, okay, so I could feel every minute. I could change my feelings every minute, right? Or I can build my feelings up and become more positive, and the feelings get better and better, right? So if I'm feeling every minute, my feelings are changing every minute, and I start thinking like, why does it take one to heal a marriage? Because I can change the feelings on the train over and over and over again. And I just thought it's the idea that there's a train. That makes sense. There's a train that carries emotion. I like that's a metaphor. The
Hmm.
metaphor of the train is something that's useful because my mood, my attitude, my feelings. Wow. So the train's got my mood, got my attitude, got my feelings, and he's feeling what I'm feeling, right? And so because he's feeling what I'm feeling, he knows everything I'm feeling. And that's why when you enter a room, people suddenly know. Like, so what's wrong with you today? Right? They say things like that, right?
Yeah.
Because they pick up the energy train. Every minute, the energy train is carrying the feelings. And the closer you get to a person, the more intimate you become, the more the train travels and more freely.
Interesting.
And it travels. And why does it take one to heal a marriage? Because that train is going to carry everything that's going to make the marriage.
Wow. Would you say that like we're kind of just passengers on our emotion train? Like we don't often have control of where this train goes to?
So just the general rule is the train goes to the person closest to you.
Mm,
So when you have intimacy, which is of
right.
all the relationships, there's only one intimate relationship,
Right.
only one. That's the one it goes to first, right? And
Mm,
then when you have children, that's your next level of intimacy. And so it goes to them next, right?
right.
And as you start to get farther and farther in relationships, you get out to strangers, people you see on a train. Those
Interesting.
people can't really feel what you're feeling, right? So when you start to realize, oh, the more intimate you are, the more the train works, the more the train does what it does, right? And so you start to realize, oh, my intimate relationship is my most important relationship, the most value. So
Yeah.
when we think about the intimate relationship, we're actually talking about the mirror. You know what the mirror? You ever heard the idea of the mirror?
No.
The
What's that?
mirror is that your intimate relationship mirrors back to you what's coming from you.
Oh,
So what's in your
interesting.
subconscious goes out on the train, bounces back from the mirror, and comes back to you.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
So you might say, well, I'm a nice person. I'm a likable person. I'm a friendly person, right?
Yeah.
Conscious mind, you might say that to yourself, right? But your subconscious has trauma from your childhood.
Oh,
And so what goes out? The subconscious. The
right.
subconscious goes out and it mirrors back from the attitude and the actions of the person as the mirror. What the mirror
Mm,
is a mirror of your subconscious mind.
wow.
And so if you have anything that's troubling, anything that's struggling, anything that's worried and that's anxious, the mirror will mirror it back. And so what's the value of relationship? The value of a relationship is it will mirror back whatever you're.
Oh,
So it's a wonderful thing. So my wife died in 2019. We were
oh,
married
I'm
40 years.
sorry.
And
Sorry to
so
hear that.
uh, so I went through that. And so then I stayed single for 4 years. And then I fell in love, and then I married again. And I married another strong woman. And this woman was strong and nicer. She was
Mm,
nicer, right? She was more willing to say she's sorry. She was more willing to forgive, right? That's not what Marcia's style was. Marcia didn't have any of that, right? Marcia was just raw meanness, right? So I kind of consider myself to upgrade in my marriage, right? But when we talk about the chaos of childhood, it turns out that her father abandoned his wife and 5 children. And that is something that still stays with her. It's in her
Right.
subconscious. And so she has this quirky thing that she struggles with.
Yeah.
When I feel I'm doing anything, she has to cut me off, right? But that's like a quirky thing that she has. But I know what that is. I know it's her subconscious at work. That's her father that she's reacting to. So as I think of everything that way, I can forgive her and I can release it right away. I don't
Hmm.
hold it. I'm not mad at it. I'm not frustrated by it. But when I got that relationship, I started to realize, this relationship is a really big gift because without that relationship, I have no mirror. The mirror shows me my subconscious.
Yeah.
And sometimes I see the mirror doing things like, what is that? I start getting
Yeah.
upset. Like, what is that? Right? When I start to see the mirror doing something I don't like, what I'm doing is I'm looking at myself.
Oh, wow.
And that is an idea that most of us don't ever learn about. We're not, oh, most of us aren't even ready to hear it. Wait a minute,
Hmm.
are you saying that a person that's an intimate relationship, when they're doing something ugly or wrong, you're looking at yourself? You're looking at your own subconscious mind? And so that's a hard idea. Like
Wow.
they're mirroring back your subconscious. So I'm looking at myself, in other words. And so that's an idea that we all struggle with. And so only the people that are getting closer to a mature place can actually accept that. People that are early in life, they really can't accept it because it's hard for them to do it, right? Because remember, we live in a world where we think everything's separate.
Right.
There's a glass table over here. There's a person over here. There's a horse over there. There's a dog over there. Everything's separate. All
Hmm.
right. So we think of it that way, and that's the way the world is designed. It's designed that we're all separate. And so you look like this, and I look like that, right? Like, do you ever think about faces? Because that face is giving us all the energy of who that person is and the experiences
Mm.
we had with them and all that, right? So all these ideas that are like, because we're dealing with the mind, we're dealing with some difficult, hard to see stuff, right?
Very interesting. Wow, you're giving me a lot to think about. If I'm just curious, I mean, I think about this with myself because I have my early childhood years were challenging. My parents got divorced or they split when I was 6. So definitely like in the early years. And I'm just curious, as adults, like we have these traits or we have these subconscious tendencies and patterns that we don't necessarily want to do, but they've become so ingrained in us, it's so natural to us that we end up doing them. And I'm just curious, like if somebody consciously wants to change those traits, like is exactly as we talked about, and we want to remember those good traits from our parents or the good things that we want to kind of pivot towards, can somebody consciously do that? And if so, how?
So let's go to your first 10 years. You're 6 years old. You have a divorce.
Hmm.
And what happens? You gravitate to mother or father. So what do? You gravitate. That means more time. Where do you
Yeah,
go? Where do you spend more time? Father or mother?
with my mom.
Okay. So now you're getting a bigger imprint from your mother than your father,
Hmm.
right? And so when your mother goes through a divorce, she's going through a very traumatic situation. It's very
Yeah,
hard on her. Well, it's
yeah.
hard on you too,
Right.
because what she's doing, whatever she's suffering through, you have
It
to feel it.
impacts. Yeah,
You have to feel it all.
right.
You have to feel all the things she feels. And so if we look at a mother
And by
who
the
not,
way, her parents are divorced as well. And I
okay,
know that's like that tends to be a pattern. Like
yes,
children of
yes,
divorce often get divorced. Well, or they could do the opposite, like my sister who waited 11 years to marry
yes.
her now husband.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
but that's like I'm trying to adjust for it. What happens when you have a divorce? You gravitate to the person you spend the most time with. That person becomes your biggest imprint, and now
Mm,
there's a relationship of a distant person and a close person.
right.
Your close person is your mother, your distant person is your father, and so when you make that distance, weird things happen as time goes by. As time goes by, you're growing up. You're starting to
Right.
become 8, 9, 10, 15, 20, 20, 25 years old. You're starting to realize things. You're starting to compare things. You're starting to go, oh, I didn't like that. Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so you literally start making a choice between your mom and your dad. And you start making a conscious choice between your mom and your dad. I'm not going to be like that. That's something we do.
So we
And
can consciously change that.
so what I call this is a bucker, a bucker, a bucker,
Mm,
like a bucking bronco that throws off the rider. And what you're doing is you're throwing off the way of that troubled parent. And so when you're a bucker, what you do is you consciously say a three-step process. Step number one, stop. I'm not doing that. Well, now what'd you just do with step number one? You said, I'm not going to do what he did. I'm not going to do that, right?
Yeah.
So if you're rebelling against your father, you're literally seeing what he's saying, what he's doing, and you're saying, "Stop! I'm not doing that." The second step you're doing, you're saying, "I'm going to do this instead." And what you're doing is you're borrowing another value, a value that you want to value more highly. And
Hmm.
so I stop. I'm not doing that. I'm doing this instead. And then step number three is you act out that value as if you had it.
Interesting.
Now,
It's
maybe
like
you
fake it
don't
till
have
you
it.
make it.
Yes, it is. There's a lot of fake it, but you
Hmm.
don't have the value. And so, by the way, I've been studying buckers for 15 years also. And so, what I learned about buckers is they literally will resist the mind for years and years. And as they resist the mind, stop, do this,
Replace.
3 steps. As they live those 3 steps, they become amazing people. And we're talking about coaches, politicians, teachers, right? We're talking about all kinds of people who achieve in the world.
Hmm.
And as they achieve, they literally achieve as a bucker. They're bucking the ways of the father or the mother that they didn't like.
Hmm.
And they do it consciously. It's a conscious thing. And so what will happen is somebody will die, or somebody will get sick, or some loss will happen. And when that happens, they snap. Now, why
Hmm.
they snap? Because they're living a life of resisting their conscious subconscious mind. They're literally fighting their subconscious mind. Stop, I'm not doing it. They do that over and over again. And so finally they snap. And when they snap, what comes in replacement is all of the barrage they were resisting. And so this is what a
Interesting.
bucker does. And so I've talked to so many people over the years about people who are married to buckers. And they don't know that they're going through the 3-step process. They don't know, honey, you're struggling through a 3-step process. Can you tell me about that? It's
Yeah.
it's not it's not happening, right? And so what will happen is the bucker will snap. When they snap, this barrage of weird stuff, like they didn't like smoking. All of a sudden they're smoking. They didn't like cheating. All of a sudden they got an affair. They didn't like materialism, and all of a sudden they're in all kinds of materialism, right? So all kinds of things that they didn't do, they now do, especially religion. If they were very religious, now they're almost like atheists,
Anti.
like the dramatic stuff that happened. And
Interesting.
and and so what I'm doing, I'm talking to the people who are left behind when that person snaps. And I'll tell them
Interesting.
this story about buckers and how this person snaps, and they start to realize, oh, geez, so I was married to a bucker and I didn't even know it. No, you didn't know it. You
Wow.
did not know. And nobody who's married to a bucker knows it because they look so successful. Why would
Hmm.
you even think there's something wrong under here? You wouldn't do that. You're just so happy. You're so content. I'm so in love, right? And
Yeah.
so we got a great relationship. So we think that way until the snap happens. And so that's what happens when
Interesting.
chaos is released because they're literally fighting their chaos kid. And so when they finally snap, there's hell to pay. And it's very, very hard on all the family. It's hard on all the money. It's hard on houses. It's hard on children, dogs. Everybody suffers when the cascade snaps. And so I've learned about buckers over the years because it became very apparent. Remember, I got over 2,000 interviews and I got just like this massive database of information about the lives these people are leading. By the way, everything I'm sharing on this podcast is never going to be repeated. It's never going to be learned from. Nobody's going to spread it around. Nobody's going to talk about it like, oh, you ought to hear this. Nobody's going to do that. You know why? Because nobody wants to know this.
You
They
think?
want that. They don't want to know it. They don't want to know it. They don't want it. This stuff. Remember, I said some people are ready for it and some people are not. When
Yeah.
people are not ready, they trash it.
Yeah.
And so that's just the way it is, right? So
Very
I
true.
wrote this book. So this book is called "This Is Not the Woman I Married." Right? Very unpopular for this book, right? Why is it unpopular? Because this is about chaos kids. This is about the 15 years I spent interviewing people about men and the chaos kids and the buckers and all that. That's all in there. But who wants to read that? If
Mm.
you don't have it happening to you, you don't want to know.
So it's
And
all the
that's
people who don't want to face these things, essentially.
they don't want to
Yeah.
face it. And who can blame them? Like,
Yeah.
why do I want to learn about this when I'm not suffering? Why would I? Right?
I think
So
that's
that's why
why.
it's an unpopular book.
I think that's why I did everything that I've done now in my own like journey and inner work and learning about all of these things is because of my breakup. I was in a 7-year relationship. I was engaged. I thought I was going to get my like happily ever after. We were very in love. We were very compatible in a lot of ways. And after it happened, like I was devastated. I thought like my future was over, my world is over, my life is over. And it's been now a year and a half since we broke up, and it took me all this time and all this journey to get to this stage. And because of the pain that I went through, I'm so self discovering and I'm so involved in like I said, I read lots of books on these topics and I'm doing all this deep inner work and I'm even doing things like on a spiritual soul level perspective because of that pain that I went through of seeing like, my
Yeah.
gosh, somebody that I love deeply can just like in a second snap. And that's essentially what happened. Like we broke up very suddenly. It's a long story, but I think because of all the pain and difficulty that I went through, I'm much more conscious and I'm much more willing to look and examine these things. Whereas when even if you're in an unhappy marriage or an unhappy partnership and there's not a lot of love there, but it's like working, you're functioning, you're very unconscious. You don't want to look or examine these things, right? You don't want to change.
Exactly.
You don't want to go deeper because everything, at least at the surface, is working just fine. Why would you look at these very painful, very difficult concepts
That's
under
right.
the hood?
So the man you were married to was probably a bucker.
We were engaged, by the way. We never got married, but we broke up
Oh,
just
okay.
before the marriage. Yeah, you think I'm not sure if he was a bucker. Oh, like how he broke up with me very suddenly, and he was
So
an
so
avoidant. I've done a lot of like
okay.
analysis of what happened. Why do you think he was because he suddenly broke up with me?
Well, when we talk about the chaos of the childhood, abandonment, abuse, and neglect is what we're looking for in the story. Is there abandonment, emotional or physical, abuse, emotional or physical, or neglect, emotional or
I think there
physical?
was neglect, some level of neglect. And his
Okay.
father passed away when he was 10. And he very much was like a fend for myself type
Okay.
of child.
All right.
So I would say there was maybe some neglect. I don't think there was abuse or abandonment per se. I guess there was abandonment in that his father passed away.
Did he grieve his father's death?
No, he's an avoidant.
Okay, so if he
Hmm.
doesn't grieve his father's death, that means there's unsolved issues between them. Because there's the unsolved issues when the father dies, I can't fix it anymore. I can't deal with it anymore. I can't talk about it anymore.
Yeah,
But I wanted to, but I couldn't. Because I wanted to, but I couldn't. Now he's holding back this kind of storm of his father's undone issues.
yeah,
And so when the father dies, it's like, oh, I can't do this anymore. I can't grieve normally. I can't grieve normally because so we have two kinds of fathers dying. We have the father who dies, who is just a wonderful guy, and he's all the things that would need to be said, he said,
hmm,
right? That's the normal death. And now you grieve that over months. And as you grieve that, you let the parent go. But then there we have the other parent. And the parent is a parent who didn't communicate the things, I love you, all this. It didn't happen, right? And because that person has all those unresolved issues, when that father dies, they're literally cutting off all possibility that we can solve anything. And so
mm,
now when that father dies, like, oh, what does that mean to me? What does that do to me? Right? And so you can see him cutting off an engagement like a long engagement. You can see him cutting off that because the unresolved issues with the father are literally tearing him apart. And
wow,
he can't heal them. He
that's so
can't fix
interesting.
them.
Well, and also since our breakup, I mean, I'm just seeing what you just said. It also repeated because since we broke up, I completely grieved the loss like it was a death. I
Okay.
healed from it. I processed it. I cried it out. I did not take any shortcuts and I did
Okay.
deep, deep healing and inner work.
Okay.
He has not done any. He
Yeah.
completely avoided it, put it in a box, compartmentalized. He hasn't spoken to me once. He hasn't
Uh-huh.
reached out to me once. He replaced me with a new girlfriend almost immediately, and he has not grieved or processed the breakup at all. So, like,
Yeah.
complete opposite of what I have done.
So what you're talking about is you have this high awareness and he has no awareness.
Yeah,
And now when high awareness marries low awareness, what are they doing?
not compatible.
They're asking for trouble. Now by the way, you said compatible because that's a word that we use,
Hmm.
compatible, right? But we're not talking about compatible. What we're talking about is a connection where everything's flowing both ways. There's flowing ways in personality. There's flowing between us in terms of agreement, apology, forgiveness. All those are flows both
Hmm.
ways. And as those you start to become aware that everything has to flow between us. And if those flows aren't flowing, there's going to be trouble somewhere. And so you had that. You had that with a guy who didn't have a father that had that open, free, loving relationship. And so when you marry a guy whose father is that troubled, if that father dies, the bad stuff is going to happen. Now you call it an avoidant, but that's like kind of very limiting name. He's really a guy who's not able to flow on all the levels. He can't
Mm-hmm.
flow on forgiveness. He can't flow on kindness. He can't flow on I'm sorry. He can't flow on openness. He can't flow on any of the things admitting he's wrong. All those
Yeah.
things are not flowing. And because they're not flowing, you're going to have trouble later on. That's the way it happens, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I'm talking about buckers. Buckers are very suppressed people because they're fighting their mind. Could you imagine that you're fighting your subconscious mind as a way of life?
I
Wow.
think he is that. Yeah. Now that I think about it, he's definitely this bucker. Like, I think that I'm living very consciously now since this whole experience happened. Like,
Yeah.
I'm very aware of myself. I learned so much. I'm very just like, I became very deep and spiritual and very aware. And I think he's consciously choosing to not be. Like, he
Yeah.
had two options for his life to come with me, to grow, to be challenged, to
Yes.
live the life he truly wants or to live the life that is stuck, limited, and
Yes.
unconscious. And he had the choice between the two, and he chose this one.
You know what's ironic about this is that he can have an event that wakes him up and he can suddenly become aware. And when he becomes aware, he's a totally different man. And he can become
Interesting.
aware. And
Hmm.
so when you start to realize people who leave in the past, like that breakup, became the purpose of that breakup was for you to become the person you are, which is
Yeah.
more, right? Right. And
Conscious.
if we go
I think.
well, if we go before the falling in love,
Hmm.
we go before that, and you look at yourself, like how would you describe yourself before you fell in love with him?
I mean, I was very young. We met when I was 22. So yeah, but I was, yeah, wow, I feel like we're in a therapy session. No, but it's good. It's great. Before the relationship, I was just young and more like carefree and
See,
yeah.
the mark of your life is you're not valuable to other people, not
Mm,
valuable to other people in that condition. You need a troubled person in your life to become the person you are today.
yeah,
Without that troubled person, you can't become that person. So what
right.
happens is when people remain in the shallow, happy state, they're not a lot of help to other people. They just kind of like not a lot of help. They just can't give much. They can't make a difference much. They can't have insights, right?
Right.
But when they go through the grill that you went through, oh my goodness, your value just went way up. And now you start making all this
Yeah.
difference
Well,
for
that's why
people.
I'm doing this podcast also, like literally
Okay.
because I want to help people who are going through tough times.
Say the
And
name of the podcast again.
Natalie saves the world one podcast
Natalie.
at a time. Literally. But no, genuinely, that's also why part of why I started the podcast was from all the pain that I went through and this very, very difficult experience. Like a year ago, I was very, very down and depressed and really thought that like my life was over. And now, after going through all this pain and this experience, exactly as you said, I'm like the strongest I've ever been, and I want to share this with the world and help others who are stuck in those unconscious patterns. I want to talk a little bit about this concept of I love you, but I'm not in love with you. So when somebody hears this from a partner, I love you, but I'm not in love with you, or they fall out of love, it's really devastating. What would you say is actually happening beneath that statement?
So let's think of this in terms of soft-hearted people and hard-natured people. Soft-hearted, hard-natured, right? That's not something people talk about a lot.
Hmm.
But there are soft-hearted people, and what they care about is they care about sensitivity and allowing and being supportive. That's how soft-hearted is, right? And when soft-hearted becomes kind of negative, they become reacting, they become fearful, they become doubting, right? So that's a soft-hearted picture of best and worst. So
Hmm.
let's look at a hard-natured person. The hard-natured person, when they're really good, they're decisive, they're action-driven, they're focused on results. That's how they are. And when they get into their negatives, they become criticizing, they become struggling, they become compulsive, right? So it's the hard-natured person and the soft-natured person. Typically, they like to marry each other. Because they
Interesting.
marry each other, the soft-hearted person doesn't say what's wrong. They don't talk about
Mm,
what's wrong, right? And so then you would slap that avoidant on them. But avoidant is too limiting. What really is happening, they're really soft-hearted. They care what people think of them a lot. They care what everybody feels. They feel kind of very sensitive and they feel very deeply, but they don't let it out. They
that's my
just,
ex. Mm-hmm.
right? Right? So that's a
Yeah.
soft-hearted person. A hard-natured person is decisive, a person action-driven, a person is interested in results, right? When a person is hard-natured, they're like, well, what's the bottom line?
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what a soft person wouldn't say that. A soft person doesn't care about the bottom line. Soft person cares about the relationship. How's
Mm-hmm.
it going? Right? But the hard person cares about the bottom line, right?
Yep.
So soft-hearted and hard-natured, right? So now we got this two ideas. When you look at the soft-hearted person, the person is not a person who's going to deal with what's happening, what's really going on. They can't deal with it. They can't handle it. And
Avoidant.
so they have to find all,
My favorite phrase. Yeah.
so now that they're living in this place where they can't confront, they can't deal with quote unquote reality, they typically marry hard-natured people. And the
It's like
hard-natured
me.
person is decisive, is action-driven, is
Mm-hmm.
and knows what they want. And so what does that hard-natured person like? What's really going on here? That's a hard-natured person, right? A soft-natured person does what's really going on. It's not a soft-natured person. They don't think about that. So when the soft-natured person has the hard-natured, by the way, Marcia was a hard-natured person. I was a soft-natured person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a lot of our conflict. So when this hard-natured person becomes hard-natured and stays that way, they're causing all kinds of trouble that they don't even understand because they don't understand they're married to a soft-hearted person, right?
Interesting.
Because they don't even have the awareness. Are you soft-natured? They would
Yeah.
never ask that. They would never even think about that, right? With the soft-hearted person, would never think about, are you hard-natured? Right? What does that mean? They wouldn't think about that, right? So what happens is they, with no awareness, soft heart or hard, they don't have that awareness at all. They just keep going bang, bang, bang because now they're conflicting about their two ways of living, soft and hard. And so I bring that up because you're getting at the deeper questions, like how come we didn't get along? Because we were soft and hard. That's the reason we didn't get
Yeah.
along,
But
right?
nobody thinks about those, I guess,
No,
in
they
the moment. Yeah.
they don't think about it. They don't want to talk about it. But if we think about people that are really introspective, people who like to think, people who like to have conversations about deeper ideas, let's say both of them did. They
Mm-hmm.
both like to talk about these deeper ideas. Well, they would dive into the idea of soft-natured and hard-natured. So there's a thing called soft-natured and hard-natured. What does that mean? They would ask
Yeah.
because these people are going to talk through the idea. Right? So I invented this tool called the Dignify Snapshot. But what it does is it explains hard-natured and soft-natured, right? So now you can actually quantify whether you're hard-natured or soft-natured. And so that's why I'm talking about because so many people end up in problems because they're not understanding anything about soft and hard. So
Interesting.
that becomes a big issue.
So you say that it just takes one person to heal a marriage. How does somebody break those generational patterns without blaming their parents or blaming themselves and without self-abandonment?
Well, if we get to the really core of your question is how do they
Heal the
not
marriage and change their patterns.
because it takes one. Why does it take one? It takes one person to decide that they are going to get to happy.
Mm,
One person decides. The
right.
other person doesn't have to decide at all. The other person could be a chaos kid. It doesn't matter.
Mm,
One person has to decide. Why, when that one person decides to become happy, they're starting to dwell on all the ideas of love, not the ideas of fear, the ideas of love. And as they dwell on the ideas of love, they start going in the direction of more love. And as they get into the direction of more love, they start to feel happier themselves. And so now they feel calm and secure and safe. They feel important and valuable and likable and upbeat. Those are really, really good feelings. They want to feel that. And so as they start to dwell on that and get better and better at moving towards love and away from fear, they start to feel happy themselves.
hmm
Okay, so now what's the struggle, the person unaware that I'm struggling chaos kid, what's the struggling chaos kid going to do? First thing they're going to do is say, that's not happening. That's not happening. They're not happy. I can't believe that, right? The first thing they're going to do is they're going to reject it, right? But as the person still becomes happier and happier and becomes more genuine and more real, they are not able to be ignored because that person is suddenly happy and they know it. That energy train is going out, the emotion is coming out, and they feel the genuineness of their happiness. And you know what they do,
Mm.
those chaos kids? Hey, how come I'm not happy? They
Yep.
have that thought. How come I'm not happy? And
Right.
so now, remember, this person who's moving in this direction of love, they're getting deeper and farther and happier. And as they do that, This person who's a chaos kid who doesn't want to learn, who's the abandoned, they'll hold these titles, these buzzwords. They want to follow their leader.
Oh,
They want to follow
interesting.
the happy person.
Right.
And so, what's the first thing they start thinking about? How do they do it?
Mm-hmm.
How do they do it? They don't know how they do it
Mm-hmm.
because that person who's getting happy isn't coming with a self-help course. They're not teaching how they're becoming happy. They're just feeling happier.
Right.
And as they feel happier, what's happening is that person who is the troubled person is following them. Now,
Interesting.
that's the goal. That's where you want to go. And so this is not about the person you marry. It's about you. It's about
Right.
you becoming happier. And if you become happier, that person you marry is going to follow you.
Right.
And they can be some very chaotic states and they'll still find a way to follow you.
Interesting. Does it
And so
ever
that's why it takes one.
does it ever happen the opposite? Like one person becomes happier and then the other one starts to resent them and not want to follow them?
So it starts with resistance. So when they start
Mm,
to say,
okay.
"You're happier?"
I don't want
No.
to change.
Right,
We
right, right,
resist
right.
change.
Right?
Yeah.
So I don't want that, and I don't believe it, right? But the whole key to this is that the happy person continues to live this way. Why? Because it's really fun to be happy.
Yeah.
It's really fun to be happy. It's just
Right.
a happier place to be. So why would the happy person want to go anywhere else? The happy person would not want to go anywhere else.
Right.
But here's the key. The happy person is not being happy so they can make something happen. They're not doing that for the person they married. They're not doing it for them. They're
Right.
doing it for themselves. And so when I started to become happy myself, Marcia, the hard-natured person, she did not believe it at all. But what she started to do in very little subtle ways, she started to go, what is going on here? She started to get curious and started to
Right.
move. And what that did is start to soften her, where she started to be more open to thinking. And that started to change her because I was starting to feel happier and happier and happier. And so that's why it takes one, because one person gets happier. And when you become the person who gets happier, you are liking yourself. You
Right.
are enjoying who you are. And becoming happier and happier, there's a whole, people have written books about this. We don't even have to rehash that, right? Well, like The Art of Becoming Happy. That's a book.
Mm,
So what is happiness? It's all the stuff that's already been written about, right? So if you want to know about happiness, boy, there's all kinds of books on happiness on Amazon. Just point a stick and you'll find it, right?
yeah.
It's just right? You can search the internet and there'll be happiness books there. So the reason it takes one to heal a marriage is because one person becomes happy and the other person follows. One person leads, one person follows. It doesn't matter which one. The most aware
Interesting.
person is going to be the leader.
But does it ever have the opposite effect? Like one person becomes happy, like kind of similar to everything I've described. One person maybe becomes happier, more conscious, wants a different life, and that then leads to divorce because the partner doesn't want to change.
Well, if that person has the right to do whatever they want to do, if they want to stay in an unaware state, they want to stay in a place where they're
Limiting
like,
themselves.
well, it's almost like they're building a wall of resistance, and
Hmm.
they feel comfortable and safe in that wall,
Yeah.
right? So if they feel comfortable and safe, maybe it's not ready for them to learn. They're not ready
Yeah.
to learn, and you need to let them go
Right.
because you don't want to hold somebody against their will.
Yeah.
And so now the question is, are they doing something for you? Is that person doing something for you? Are they giving you something you want? Because that's really the whole transaction idea of transactional relationships. You're
Yeah.
giving me what I want. I want you to stay and give it to me, right?
Right.
But that's not what you want. You want to really pursue happiness. Happiness is the whole mission. It's what we have this life and the next life. That's what we want. We want happiness. And so if you have a person who's not really willing to change and not willing to learn and not willing to open up, it's perfectly fine. Just
It's
let it
not
go.
for you.
Look what you went through. Look what you went
Happened
through
to
to let
me.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you went through a lot.
Yeah. And it was ultimately because I wanted to keep growing and changing and being challenged. And I think he did want those things deep down, but he was so afraid to try.
Well, you got to allow him to keep his fear.
Yeah. You can't
Allow
force
him to keep his
someone,
fear. That's right.
you can't
Let
force
him
them,
allow him to keep his fear.
even if it's like you want the best for them and you're doing it because you care, they ultimately have to choose it themselves. You can't force anyone to choose something that they're not willing to choose.
Which is something you discovered as you were mourning the relationship.
Yeah.
Isn't that one of the
Yeah,
things you?
which he hasn't done any. I mean, I don't want to bash him or anything, but as far as I know, he has not done any growth or healing. He's kept everything. He kept our apartment. He kept the exact same routine, exact same everything. He replaced me with a new girlfriend
But it may be
almost
time.
immediately.
It may be time for him to stay where he is. It may be time for him to not learn.
Yeah.
And you need to allow him to, like, he might learn when he's 75.
Yeah.
Like,
But it's,
oh, okay. All right,
yeah.
75. That's a good time to learn.
But it's not my, I don't want to say not my problem, but it's not serving me to wait around until maybe that will happen one day.
Well,
Yeah.
see, what happened is you got close to him. You got close to him because he was showing you his best qualities. And he was giving you those best qualities, and you were falling in love with those best qualities, right?
Hmm.
But you didn't see the chaos side of him. And
Yeah.
because you didn't see the
He
chaos
hid
side of him,
it.
you weren't thinking about it. You
Yeah.
weren't dwelling on that.
I don't
Uh,
even know if he was aware of those qualities.
but
Yeah.
the whole purpose of this relationship that ended was you had to become a valuable person. And
For
that's how
myself.
you did it because of him.
Yeah.
Without him, you couldn't become a valuable person.
Right. Yeah. The mirror. So true. Wow. Such a great therapy session. This is no, I just have a few more questions for you and then we'll finish up. So I typically do just like a little rapid fire section with all my guests. So just answer with the first thing that comes to mind when I ask you each of these
Okay.
questions. So are you a morning person or a night owl?
Morning person.
Do you prefer coffee or tea?
Coffee.
What's one habit you had to unlearn to save your marriage or your now marriage?
I'm releasing my father.
What's one misconception people have about your work?
That is fast.
What is, oh yeah, I'm sure it takes a long time. What is one belief about love that you no longer hold?
It's conditional.
Yeah, that's a good one. What is the most dangerous relationship myth?
I love you, but I'm not in love with you. We didn't dwell on that, but I love you is another way of saying I'm socially acceptable because I love you. I'm not acceptable because I'm not in love with you. I don't,
Interesting.
the separation between I love you and I'm not in love with you is
Hmm.
I don't have intimacy with you. That's really what they're saying,
Right,
especially often spoken by a soft-hearted person. I'm not in love with you. And that means the magic of the relationship is gone because
right,
I'm not in love with you. But I love you as a
right.
general
We care
idea.
about you,
As a
but you're
general
not.
idea. So I'm
Right,
socially acceptable, but I'm not in love with you.
right.
And that's why the separation.
Interesting. Yeah, that's so interesting how people can fall in and out of love in
Yeah.
different periods. What is one sign that someone is repeating a childhood pattern in their relationships?
Disturbed, urgent, pressed, and edgy. When you
Mm,
start to feel those four words, disturbed, urgent, pressed, and edgy, you know something's wrong. And if you
disturbed.
feel that and you keep on feeling disturbed, urgent, pressed, and edgy, you know trouble is coming. It's the
Interesting.
beginning, the earliest signs of trouble when
In a
you start to
relationship.
feel that. Yeah.
Disturbed, urgent, pressed,
Pressed and edgy.
edgy. Okay. And then finish this sentence. Most marriages don't fail because of blank.
They don't fail because of compatibility.
Like we said,
Yes.
right. Or attachment styles. Okay, amazing. Well, this was such a fun conversation. It was essentially a free therapy session. So thank you. Before we wrap things up, for anyone who is listening who feels like this conversation really resonated with them and wants to learn more about your work, where's the best place for them to find you?
You can save thismarriage.com and
Okay,
Larry Bilotta on YouTube,
great.
and they'll be able to see what all the choices are.
Okay, amazing. I will link that in the show notes for anyone who wants to learn more about Larry's services. So thank you so much for your time today and for all of you for listening to another episode of Natalie Saves the World, one podcast at a time. We didn't save the world today, but we did have a really important conversation about reclaiming choice, awareness, and agency in our relationships. Larry, thank you so much for your time, your honesty, and for sharing your perspective and work so generously. This was such a fun conversation for me and so informative. And to anyone watching, as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who could use it or who might benefit from it. And feel free to leave your thoughts or questions in the comments. I always love
And
hearing
you're
from you.
and you're
Sorry?
very good at what you do.
Oh, thank you. Well, like we talked about that charisma, right?
Yes.
It's my traits from my parents. Well, thank you all again so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next episode. Have a wonderful day.